Called Dennis O'Rourke.
New Zealand First does support this bill because increasing salaries of local government CEOs have caused strong public protest, very strong public protest throughout the country, and that is especially so in Christchurch. And despite the comments by Nick Smith, it is the CEO's salary which is upsetting people, and quite justifiably. It is not the general salaries received by people who work in local government. It is not the general salaries of people who work in local government. It is, in fact, the CEO's salary which is upsetting people, and that's a fact. Go and ask them if you don't believe me. And, Mr Speaker, it is complete nonsense for Nicky Wagner to say that the processes by which councils are currently assessing CEO salaries are satisfactory. I know nobody in the community who knows anything about local government who believes that the current processes are anything like satisfactory. So for Nicky Wagner to say that they're okay is complete and utter nonsense. Mr Speaker, the Christchurch City Council did increase the remuneration of its Chief Executive Officer by 14.4%, $68,000 to $538,000, and that was only declined by the most extraordinary level of protest that has ever been seen in that city on any subject. And this increase was despite the functions of the City Council now being more limited because of the role currently performed by the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority. And that simply does not seem to have been taken into account in the decision to increase the remuneration of the CEO. Mr Speaker, the Council's performance in Christchurch, especially that of the CEO, was widely criticised in Canterbury by both the people of Christchurch and the business sector, and they had some justification for that. The performance failures were in fact partly admitted by the Council itself, and it therefore makes it very difficult for them to explain the magnitude of the remuneration increase for the CEO in those circumstances. As a result, it was only great public concern that led to that increase in fact being declined in the end. Mr Speaker, the Local Government Act 2002 specifies mandatory criteria for consideration by the Remuneration Authority in fixing the remuneration of mayors and councillors and community board members, but it is silent about the remuneration for CEOs. This bill proposes an amendment to the Local Government Act which preserves CEO salaries being negotiated and agreed between the CEO and the Council, but it requires that agreement to be approved by the State Services Commission, effectively a power of veto. And New Zealand First agrees with that. But New Zealand First says that does not go far enough. There is, in fact, another bill in the ballot in my name, which has not yet been drawn, but it would establish some appropriate criteria for application by local authorities in fixing CEO remuneration. And those issues were not addressed by Nick Smith, a glaring omission of substance on his part, because it's not just about transparency, it is about the lack of criteria. And, Mr Speaker, the sorts of things that need to be included are to take into account special circumstances such as the existence of Sarah in Christchurch. It also needs to take into account what a local authority should receive in comparison with a CEO of a commercial organisation. And that's an extremely important point. So those would qualify the words, quote, comparable to those that apply in similar positions as in this particular bill. And there is a precedent for such a discount because the directors of state-owned enterprises have what is called the public service element taken into account as a discounting factor for their remuneration. So New Zealand First would support this bill, but at the appropriate time will move an SOP to insert the same matters in this bill as I have set out as a list of criteria for the assessment of CEO salaries in the bill which I have drafted and is in the ballot. So with those qualifications, New Zealand First will support the bill going forward, and we look forward to further debate on those other issues which I have mentioned.
Call Jamie Lee Ross.
Mr. Speaker, ratepayers across the country are receiving